Welcome, one and all, to the Ferret and Raccoon podcast, episode 194. I am your one and only host for this podcast, the Angry Raccoon, bringing you the last podcast of June 2022. I want to wish everyone, or I guess say to everyone, Happy Pride Month. If you are celebrating it, well, you should really to some extent. And yeah, it's been a very interesting last few weeks or couple of days for the most part. The two major things that I guess that have been keeping me somewhat occupied or more terrorized to some extent is the weather in England. It's actually been hot. Now, England isn't really a hot country. We don't typically get summer, but we did have at least 3 days where it was quite hot. It did reach about 28 to 30 degrees, and I was unfortunately out in that weather. And it was also that kind of heat or humidity or weather where even the breeze was hot and it was just ugly. Like, when I got home, it was not pleasant to kind of come back all sticky and try and cool down. And you really don't want to do anything when you're in that kind of state of mind, especially a podcast. And even more so when you have such a big episode, like I'm sure you can tell from the length of this episode. It's going to be a slightly bigger one in terms of what's actually in it and the stuff that I'm going to be talking about. But yeah, what I am referring to is the fact that we kind of had E3's replacement to some extent, which is just everyone else doing their own, showcases, game showcases. I'm not really sure what exactly this is called anymore. Some people have their own names for it. Some people just doing their own things, but we'll get onto that in a bit. In terms of what I've been doing, I haven't actually been doing much. The weather has been a bit distracting. It's been really tricky to get things done. It's a miracle I got this podcast done itself. But the one thing I have been doing over the last few weeks, which is, I guess, a bit of a weird thing, is I've just been doing research on things. I've just been learning about things that exist in a physical sense, mainly like video games and books, because those are two things I do like to collect. Not for the sake of it, but for actual reasons. I want these books because of what's in them and the importance and all that kind of stuff. So I've been doing a lot of research on art books, for example, art books that I want, art books I didn't know they existed in terms of films and games and that. And, it was interesting learning about, these kinds of books that exist, seeing if I can try and track them down, add them to my collection, and of course, figuring out if I have the money for all the space for them. So it's been fun. It's been kind of cool. I've bought some actual interesting ones as well, some newer ones, some older ones. And speaking of newer ones, there are actually some interesting ones that are coming out in the next couple of months. Just to quickly ramble, Love, Death and Robots is going to have an art book. Star Wars, I almost said Star Trek there. Star Wars Visions is getting one. Marvel's What If is getting one. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in that story. I haven't watched Marvel's What If. It kind of is a little bit unappealing given its style, but hey, I'm willing to give it a shot. And weirdly enough, the Netflix live-action Cowboy Bebop series is getting an art book, which I'm very interested in. I'm not paying full price for it. I'm waiting for it to drop in price before I pick that thing up. But I really want to read about how that show became the disaster that we all know it to be, because what could have been is very fascinating. I mean, to quickly ramble, that live-action series was never going to be a success because no one's heart was in the right place and no one wanted to make it, obviously. And nor will any other adaptation of any foreign, Japanese, or video game adaptation, in my opinion. But yeah, I really want to know where that series went wrong. I mean, I think we kind of already know, but it should be interesting. But yeah, let's actually crack on with this episode because we've got a lot to talk about for the most part. And we've got some film trailers to talk about before we get into games because video games and art books have just been on my brain. So this is going to be a little bit of a reliever to finally get these things off my mind. So first trailer we're going to talk about is going to be for Prey, which it's just Predator. Like, they're not even trying to tell an original story. Like, it's honestly time to leave the franchise alone. This and Aliens for the most part, because they're finished. These studios aren't going to hire anyone who would make a good film without like tampering with the direction, which we've seen countless amounts of times. You name a film based on an established franchise, you'll be hard pressed to find a film that didn't have studio tampering because they know what's best, as they say to the director. But yeah, no, this film looks like trash, and it most likely is going to be bad given that it's not getting a theatrical release. that is, I guess, one good thing about the streaming services being the more dominant, I guess you could say, platform now. You can kind of tell what's going to be good or what could be good based on whether it's going to get a cinematic release. And this film is not. It is going to be on Hulu, so you know that it's going to be a fantastic, great film that everyone loves, and that Hulu and the studio 20th Century Fox / Disney have absolute faith in. Besides that, I will admit, Native Americans fighting aliens is a great idea. And I'm sure the film will reference its like heavy-handed like metaphor analogy, but they've made this film for only two real reasons at the end of the day. The first is to make money off a prequel that no one asked for, because I really don't think anyone was begging to see, an origin story of Predator. This is like technically the second one to some extent, and I'm sure in 5 years it's just going to do another one when this film flops. And also, so that this film can't be criticized for the most part. I mean, it's the age-old situation of doing certain things or including certain things, certain agendas in that sense, just so that you can have certain people, most likely on Twitter and that, most likely young, impressionable teenagers for the most part, going, oh, what, you didn't like Prey? Well, you must hate women or Native Americans, because that's all it boils down to at the end of the day, is you cannot criticize certain things because you must hate something that is, socially being discussed. But that's not always the case. Sometimes media is just garbage, regardless of who's in it or what's in it. But yeah, besides that, the series is honestly tainted at the end of the day. I mean, the last Predator film technically had a Predator in it. So yeah, I would not do any more with that franchise, given that is a fact with it. But let's move on to the next trailer, and the next one is going to be for Black Adam, which is going to be another DC superhero film starring Dwayne Johnson. And yeah, I understand why people are hyping or were hyped for this film. It does look promising for the most part, to some extent, and I'm not even a big fan of superhero stuff, especially not DC stuff, so, props for getting my attention to some extent. Like, when I saw Dwayne Johnson, like, being killed or sacrificed, I'm guessing he's maybe some kind of servant or slave character in this logic, I got Scorpion King flashbacks, because isn't that what happens in that film? I haven't seen that film since it came out, so, yeah, it just felt like, a slight rehash, but I know that wasn't their intentions. Obviously, it goes back to the origin of, Black Adam and that, but it's really interesting how they're going into great detail explaining his like origins and giving him legitimate reasoning to be vengeful, Like, they're flirting with the idea of him being a good guy, and if you know the character, that's unlikely. But it gives the film like a great dilemma. Like, will he actually become a good guy? Will he at least consider it to some extent? I think that's really interesting in comparison to other bad guy origin stories where there's nothing to really keep the film going, or no real surprises. They're going to be evil, they're going to be bad. The same thing with Joker when it came out. No one was surprised by the ending, how it ended and what happened, but stuff like that is interesting. And if they do follow through with what I'm hoping might happen, then yeah, we could be on to a winner. I mean, DC have been doing pretty alright so far with the last few films. Joker was okay, Suicide Squad was good. Maybe this will continue its streak. Who knows? I think as long as Zack Snyder stays far away, then yeah, I think they're on to success. Well, clearly, given the last few films. And I honestly wasn't expecting to see like Hawkman, Adam Smasher, or even like Dr. Fate in this film. Like, I didn't know this was or had anything to do with Justice League, and I actually really like those characters, so that was really nice. But I do wonder how big their roles are going to be. Like, I kind of hope that they're not going to take away from Black Adam to some extent, but I also do wonder if they are just here to be like sequel bait, or are they going to technically be villains to him in some sense. Like, they're trying to tell him, be a good guy, you can't be a bad guy, and he's, not going to listen and just decide to be a bad guy, and, bridges get burned for the next film and that kind of stuff. So that in itself is interesting, and I do like the fact that I guess it's implied that he's just going to go on a rampage, an understandable rampage. You've been killed, you lost your family, you've been dead for, a few thousand years. Yeah, I would be smashing stuff up too. But the comedic elements fall flat in this film. Like, I don't know why they're here. Like, they're very forced, and tonally they do feel out of place. Like, the scene where he just punches the guy in the air, and like the characters like, like rolling up the window. It's like, what is going on? Like, it feels like someone higher up was like, oh, you need to make this film more of a comedy because we can't make it all depressing and foreboding. We got to make sure it's lighthearted in that, which has never worked out in DC's favor. If they want to be, I don't know, somewhat grim to some extent, let the series or the film be grim. It's just silly at the end of the day, in my opinion. But yeah, no, I'm really interested in this one. Will I watch it in cinemas? No, but it looks fun. Next one we're going to talk about is going to be for Strange World, which is the next Disney animated film. They have so many coming out. It's a little hard to keep track, and I don't really have Disney Plus, so yeah, I don't really know what's going on with Disney and Marvel and all that. It's unfortunately all blurring, not just them, with other people as well. It's just, ugh. But yeah, despite its boring title, I'm actually excited for this one, mainly because it's a sci-fi animated film, and you don't really see like fantasy sci-fi animations on a scale like this, or at least in a film format. And I'm honestly not sure why. Maybe when this film comes out, and maybe whether it's good or bad, I will be able to, I guess I'll have my answer to some extent. But yeah, you just don't see it. And the only ones I can actually think of are like WALL-E by Disney, The Croods, DreamWorks, and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball 2 from Sony Animation Studios. And even then, like, they're debatable if you even want to call them sci-fi, fictional, fantasy things. Like, there just isn't really one. So I guess if they do it right, I'll give Disney props for being able to do it, I guess. It's weird how they had the old-time narration aesthetic, which makes sense given, it's a strange world, it's sci-fi, that kind of stuff. But then they just, like, drop that element just to show you a generic trailer and a bunch of scenes to make you go, oh, wow. It's weird. It's like a missed opportunity. I don't know why they didn't follow through with that idea. I think that'd be really cool. Maybe it'll play into the actual story, but yeah, it's a bit bizarre. I really like the creativity to an extent, and the world does look nice, but everything about this film feels safe, unfortunately. They're not exactly pushing the envelope here, and there's nothing here I haven't seen before. It's unfortunate because it feels like I've already seen this film, even when you go back to films like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball, the second one more accurately. Yeah, I've just kind of been there, done that to some extent, and also, I feel like this film is going to like be really manipulative and sappy with like its themes of family, which, yeah, it's fine. It's a children's film, but if you really want this film to stand out and, be up there with one of the greats, because right now every Disney film needs to be trying to knock or be on the same level as Turning Red, in my opinion. Turning Red is up there, no matter what any, virgin 40-year-old white male American says. It's a great film. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But luckily, there is a better looking sci-fi animated series produced by Titmouse, and it looks amazing. And that is going to be Savanger's Reign, which is, I think this is going to be on HBO Max. But this is a new animated series, and visually it's beautiful. It's weird. It's kind of creepy to some extent. This is how you make an alien planet to some extent. It looks really out there, like some stuff I've never, seen before. It does literally feel like an alien planet, and it's weird because even just in this trailer, you see so little and it's all out of context, but it's so visually striking and it's so interesting to look at and just kind of marvel. I just want to know what's going on, and I hope that some things are explained and some things are not. I think that's one of the key things I think a lot of people, when they do science fiction, especially more modern science fiction, they always forget. They always got to give things an answer. Everything's got to be explained. Sometimes you just don't know, and we will never know. I don't mean to sound depressing, but you will die with unanswered questions. That's a fact. And in my opinion, certain storytelling, it needs to be like that. You don't need the answers. That's why I hate prequels, because we always got to tell the story of why this person's like that. No, we don't. But yeah, it looks really cool. It's clear they've taken inspiration from Moebius. That's spelled Moebius. He's a French artist. Please look him up. He's fantastic. With a little hint of Akira. Some of the weird face morphing, it kind of looks like some of the things that happen in Akira, more actually the animated film. So that's pretty cool. And this series seems like it's going to be exploring themes of like hope, survival, existentialism. I think I said that correctly. I've been struggling with that word almost all day, but yeah. Which is cool for a show that I think is going to be a bit of a slow burn. I don't think it's going to be an action-packed series. I think this might be one of those series where you will get moments where the characters just talking, the characters just exploring, they're thinking about things, they're trying to make a plan, and I'm all for that. And yeah, I'm actually really excited for this series. I really hope it's good. I hope it's I hope it's a wonderful series. And that's pretty much going to do it for the trailers in terms of films. Now we've got everything to do with gaming for the most part. And yeah, we've got quite a few now. Quick disclaimer, I'm obviously not talking about every game that was shown off during these showcases, because this podcast would probably be 6 hours long and it'd be very boring, because after a while I wouldn't have much to say. So this is just the things I really liked, I wanted to talk about. I didn't want to talk about any kind of remakes or unoriginal concepts or anything that's just really stupid for the most part. I'm not even going to mention it here because there was a lot of dumb stuff that got mentioned, which is quite unfortunate and makes me a little bit worried about the gaming industry. But let's start with Summer Game Fest 2022. Two quick ones I want to talk about, and that is going to be for Aliens Dark Descent. This was basically an animated trailer, and it was a great little animation. It's very on brand with a tasteful amount of like fan service, and the ending or the concept behind it was great. You know, just the idea of, you know, your typical situation, you got your Marines, they get attacked by the xenomorphs, and I do find it quite interesting that one of the characters we see in the trailer does, you know, he pretty much skedaddles, gets the hell out of there, and, you know, he kind of gets his comeuppance. I think that was pretty cool. I like that. But those few seconds of gameplay honestly killed my hype for this game. It looks like a mobile game. I don't know what's going on there. I don't think we need an Aliens game like this. We need an Aliens game like Isolation or Infestation. Make games like that. And if you've never played Aliens Infestation, you are missing out, my friend. But yeah. Moving on to the next trailer. More actually just talking about the trailer, not necessarily the game. And that is going to be for Goat Simulator 3. Just out of nowhere, one of the more random ones. And yeah, there is no Goat Simulator 2, as I guess they're just skipping it, which is funny. And it makes sense for a few reasons, mainly because I guess they're kind of seen as like the king of the so bad it's good games, or, you know, the most random things you can do kind of games. I'm not really sure what kind of genre Goat Simulator falls in. I know it's supposed to be a parody on all these, you know, simulator games, you know, like Train Simulator, Bus Simulator, Boat Simulator, Plane Simulator. I get it's a parody of that, but I don't really know what its actual genre is. Just comedy, ragdoll physics? I don't know. The original game was really fun. It was nothing more than, you know, a few hour distraction, and I think the developers know that. Hence why they have so much fun with a lot of the marketing. And speaking of marketing, this trailer actually parodies the Dead Island 2 E3 trailer from back in 2014, the one where the guy's jogging and he slowly turns into a zombie with chaos happening behind him. And they did a great job recreating it. This is the second time, actually, that the studio has parodied a Dead Island trailer. They also did this is where it gets a little bit confusing now with numbers and facts. They also parodied the first reveal trailer for the first Dead Island game when they, I guess, after the fact that Goat Simulator 1 became a thing. And given that Dead Island 2 is still not out, no idea what's going on. It might ironically be dead at this point. And it's just so strange that even Dying Light 1 and 2 has come out before this sequel, and most of the team that made Dying Light 1 and 2 were comprised of people who made the original Dead Island and Riptide, so it's all weird and all confusing, and I do wonder if the creators of Goat Simulator are like throwing some kind of shade at Dead Island 2, you know, almost as if they're saying like, oh, you should just skip number 2 as well, or oh, even we can release a game before you, or something along those lines. I don't know. I do wonder what the relationship is between them, and maybe someone, you know, came from one studio, or maybe, you know, like I said, maybe there's actually a little bit of a not necessarily a spark, but, you know, maybe there's some things going on behind the scenes. Maybe two people don't like each other or something like that. spite might be at play to some extent, which would be really funny because the developers of Goat Simulator are clearly winning. But let's talk about the next trailer real quick. Some of these I'm going to be talking about them extensively, some are just quick mentions, and I would absolutely love for you to actually go and check out some of these games if you have not seen them or heard them, maybe they missed you. I'm going to put a link to all of the games I want to talk about in the description. I'm not going to put all the presentations because I don't think anyone is realistically going to be watching 8-hour, 7-hour presentations. It's a bit much. But yeah, the next one I want to talk about real quick is Ground Divers. This is essentially a bit of a puzzle, old school kind of arcadey game. If their aim was to make a game or trailer that looks something like out of Japan from the 90s in terms of like its style, its marketing, its presentation, and I guess the trailer itself, then you succeeded. It looks great and it looks cute. I like the little robot character, and I like the idea that it's a little bit more complex in terms of what it's about, essentially being a little bit of a dungeon crawler, where you move your character, you attack, and you progress to some extent. It looks like fun, and I'm glad it got spotlighted. Same with the next one I want to talk about, which is going to be Freaked Fleapit, which super bizarre name. This is the animated character trailer, and this is another really interesting one, as you're an anime girl version of Death, and from what I'm gathering, you have a human on a lead, like a dog lead, and you're commanding them to move or do your bidding in a sort of grid-based rhythm style game, a little bit like Helltaker or Cryptid the Necrodancer to some extent. I'm guessing music will play an element in there because the tiles are squared, but who knows. We didn't see enough gameplay to really know, and they don't really explain what this game is, and I haven't really looked it up because I don't think there is that much about it. I do know that what's her name? Oh yeah, Lily Pichu is going to be doing some of the music, which is really cool. I do like her sound and her style, so that's actually really nice. But yeah, I'm going to keep my eye on this one because this, much like I previously mentioned, Helltaker could be one of those big ones that just grows in popularity, and you're going to see artwork and people talking about it everywhere. So fingers crossed for them. Next one I want to talk about, which is, I guess I should mention as well, I've moved on to talking about the Summer of Gaming, which is IGN's E3 showcase thing. Basically, they just got a bunch of trailers. So yeah, both Ground Drivers and Freaked Fleapets were under this. I should really mention where they are, but that will all be in the description and download link as well. Yes, next one I want to talk about is going to be for Gori. I don't know why I said Gori. It's like my Japanese coming through. Gori, Cuddly Carnage. Now, this game has been floating around for a little while, but we haven't really seen much. We've kind of known the general logistics of it. You're basically a cat that's killing cute unicorns who seem to be possessed or are zombies. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. And typically with these games, when you mix like brutality with like a cute aesthetic, it can be hit or miss. It can be style over substance to some extent. We've seen it a few times. I think a good example would be the game, I think Naughty Bear. I can't remember its name. I really should have looked it up. There was a game, I think definitely on Xbox 360 and PS3, where I think you play as a teddy bear and you killed other teddy bears. Look it up. It kind of reminds me of that to some extent. And yeah, it is kind of tricky with these games because they do kind of focus too much on, that whole aesthetic of, oh, it's a cute cat character and they're killing unicorns. Isn't that great? And then the game doesn't always end up being that great to some extent. But I'm really rooting for this game. I actually hope it's really good. They're not taking themselves too seriously. To some extent, it does remind me a little bit of Lollipop Chainsaw. That was a game that kind of mixed, both the seriousness and the comedic element of it pretty well to an extent. And the main character themselves reminds me a lot of Blinks the Time Sweeper. So that's always a plus, and hopefully we'll see Blinks return someday. I got my fingers crossed. And yeah, I am also hoping for Devil May Cry Combat. It kind of looked like that to some extent. He was doing some, or she, I don't know if the character has a gender or that's specified. They were kind of doing like air combos and stuff like that, which was pretty cool. I like that mechanic, especially that he's on like a hoverboard or a skateboard. It's fun. I hope this game is a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm really rooting for this game because I'd love to see. Well, I'd love everyone I'm talking about to succeed. Next one I want to talk about, one of the biggest surprises that was shown off during the Gaming Fest was, Snufkin, Melody of Moominvalley. Now, I'm actually a big fan of the Moomins, the comic series with the hippo-like characters. I'm sure most of you have probably seen them. But yeah, I was not expecting this. It honestly looks like a chill experience, and I think that is probably the aim with this one. It weirdly reminds me a little bit of Untitled Goose Game to some extent, given that you're just going around doing things, potentially messing with people, changing the environments, and those games definitely have their place and their audience. And I think, given that it is a Moomins related game, I'm all for it to some extent. We haven't really seen any Moomins games. I'm not sure how many there are. There's definitely not one on the bloody PS5, but the developers clearly know what they're doing, because they actually call the main character Moomin Moomin Troll. Most people don't. They just call him Moomin in some depictions. And his full name is Moomin Troll. And, weirdly enough, his parents are Moomin Mom and Moomin Pa or Dad. I can't remember because of translations and different versions. I've weirdly both watched the animated show in English and Japanese, so things get confusing. But I'm actually really interested in this game. Hopefully it gets like a wide release, and hopefully the people who will enjoy this game definitely find it and know about it, because it definitely has its audience. Next, we're going to be moving on to Devolver Digital's showcase, and they had quite a few things to show off, but I really wanted to highlight just two things for the most part. And the first one I want to talk about is going to be for Skate Story, which is another game that was announced a little while ago, but this is the first time they've really given more details and shown off more gameplay. And honestly, the concept is fantastic, and it's visually very striking. So just the idea of you playing as a demon who's made of glass, and they've just got a skate, is really just cool. I don't know, there's something just really works about this idea, and I'm not quite sure. You're made of glass, and obviously every time you fall, you just shatter and break. And I feel like it's just going to be one of those games that, not to be rude to the developers, you maybe play once and you never play it again necessarily, or you don't constantly replay it. Maybe that might actually be an element to the game. But yeah, I'm actually really feeling this game. It's got a really great aesthetic, like I've already said. It does seem like it's going to have a relaxed atmosphere, and the camera angle is oddly interesting for the most part. Like, it feels handheld, as if they were trying to capture that style or that approach of essentially people or cameramen, filming, skaters. If you ever watch like a skate video or skate montage, it's usually a guy who's doing certain camera pans and, sweeps, and, you got the fish eye lens, that kind of stuff. It feels like they were really trying to go for this, you have a camera following you, trying to film like your best tricks or whatever, which is really cool. It's honestly really cool, and I'm really excited to see how people are going to react to this game, especially skaters, or how well this game is going to do against something like Tony Hawk, because that's not really a thing right now, and I don't think they're going to remake Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, not with Microsoft actually acquiring Activision, who owns the rights still, I believe. Then again, they might lose them, I don't know. It's all confusing. Next one I want to talk about regarding Devolver Digital is going to be the Plucky Squire. Now, I was already sold by its cute characters and picture book aesthetic the moment I saw it, and I was like, I was already counting my money. Then you start adventuring outside of the book into the bedroom, and the game just got brilliant from there. Like, we need more creative and fun games like this. It's really cute, it's really fun. It just, once again, it kind of goes back to just being like another game that's a little bit relaxed. It did remind me a bit of the Legend of Ditto to some extent, its aesthetic, and that's another game I would highly recommend, especially for like rogue likes, a bit like the original or more classic playing Zelda games for the most part. And yeah, it really looks really nice. It looks really nice, and I actually can't wait for this game, and hopefully it gets a physical release. But yeah, it looks beautiful in some places as well, and yeah, it was one of those games where I can't stop gushing about it, but I really can't say too much else about it. We barely get anything from it, but it looks like a great game. It might even be a cool game for children to maybe get invested in. I don't condole trying to get your children to play games. Let them choose their own path. If you're a gamer and your child is not, that's perfectly fine. Your child does not need to inherit every single thing you like. That is something I see way too often, and it's quite invasive, and it can be quite dangerous to some extent. Like, a good example would be parents, to some extent pushing their children onto Star Trek or Star Wars. You know, just having, they watch Star Wars for the first time and they love it. They really love it, just like their dad. They really love it. Don't do that, please. It always leads to heartache at the end of the day. But let's move on to the next showcase, which is going to be the Xbox and Bethesda showcase, which did have me thinking, when Microsoft does acquire Activision, is it going to be the Xbox, Bethesda, and Activision, BioWare? Not BioWare, excuse me. Let me do that again, because I think I got all turned upside down with that. When they do acquire Activision Blizzard, is it going to be the Xbox, Bethesda, Activision, and Blizzard showcase, or is it just going to be Xbox, Microsoft? I do wonder, but we'll see. We're going to talk about the biggest reveal, I think, despite it not actually being a new reveal or game, and that is going to be for Hollow Knight, Silksong, the Game Pass reveal trailer, because this game is going to be free to play when it comes out if you have Game Pass, which is awesome for those of you who have it. And I am so happy for the fans who finally have something to latch onto and be re-excited about after 3 years of nearly nothing. And like I said before, it's going to be out really soon. One thing that was actually really cool about the Microsoft Bethesda showcase was everything they showed off was going to be released in the next 12 months, which is exactly what I want to hear. Obviously, if things aren't working out, delay the game, push it back. I don't want rush games, take your time, but that's really cool. I feel like Hollow Knight Silksong is pretty much finished. I think it was in a near enough finished state in 2020. I think just there's I'm not going to go into speculations in terms of what's happened, but from what I was aware, Team Cherry, who is the people who made Hollow Knight, comprised of 2 people. Life was pretty busy for them. Obviously, COVID slowed down their progression, and I believe one of them became a father. Congratulations to them. And so obviously those factors do slow down the development, especially if it's just you and your best friend. So that's probably the reason why it's taken so long. And I also partly think that these guys might be perfectionists, which, hey, I'm not complaining. If they make a great game, good on them. But yeah, no, this game still looks amazing in every way possible. It looks like it is going to be, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to hype it up too much or hype it for myself, but it looks like it's going to be a good game at the end of the day. And it looks like it's going to be massive as well. Like, I know in the previous trailer they said there's going to be side quests, and it looks like the main character you play as, Hornet, is going to have a ton of unlockable moves. It looks like by the end of it she's going to be an absolute powerhouse in terms of that kind of stuff. And yeah, I would argue that this is now probably the most anticipated game, period. Because what else is there to look forward to? Not much other than Resident Evil 4 reimagining. And that's about it, because everything else is kind of just a little bit generic for the most part. Sad to say, but it is true. I should preference that, actually. In terms of AAA games, I don't know if Hollow Knight Silksong is a AAA game. I don't think it is. I think it's still technically indie. But yeah, we'll see. Next trailer we want to talk about, one of the last ones in terms of an actual game or brand new game, still with the Xbox and Bethesda showcase, is going to be for High on Life, which is a brand new game coming from, I forget the studio's name, but it is spearheaded or led by Justin Roiland, who most people know as the creator of Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites. This is essentially their next game, their biggest game. In an interview I watched with some of the lead developers and Justin himself, he did kind of refer to this game as being their attempt at a AAA, and then he almost corrected himself comedically and said, would it be AAA or would it be a III game, because they're indie? And I do wonder if that is actually a term or whether that will catch on, but I actually like that. Maybe Hollow Knight is a III game. I don't know, but only time will tell. Yeah, I'm digging it. I'm really digging this game. It's giving me Oddworld vibes for the most part, given the way some of the characters look. They have kind of like an alienish, bug-eyed, weird proportion aesthetic. It does feel like a more colourful version of that, yes, but I do wonder if they have taken inspiration from it. And obviously with Justin Roiland, like I mentioned, he's just going to bring a really creative, a really bizarre, and a really wonderful element to this game. he's an incredibly talented person. Like, you can say what you want. If you hate Rick and Morty, that's perfectly fine. I 100% understand that this, like, I like Rick and Morty. I completely get why someone would not. But when it comes to him and when he works with the right kinds of people, he is just doing laps around so many other people in his position and higher. And letting this man make games is a fantastic idea, especially with him and Tim Schafer, who is the lead at Double Fine, another fantastic studio that make great creative games. I would love for them two to come together to make a game. That would be Endgame for the most part. That would be probably the greatest game ever. But yeah, I'm sure this game is going to be more of a comedic kind of like slapstick kind of aspect. You do see some really bizarre things like, you know, characters fighting each other and just, you know, the concept of like humans just becoming drugs for an alien race is, it's ludicrous, but it works. It does feel like Saturday morning cartoon just escapades. It's honestly really brilliant at the end of the day. And it's just so weird when you really think about it. Obviously, that might be the understatement of the year, but the fact that you're going to be firing guns that are an alien race who have essentially turned themselves into guns, I guess because they've evolved or become that high, I don't know. They're going to be talking to you as well as looking at you throughout the game. That's the thing that really gets me. I'm not sure if I'm going to be comfortable with something just, you know, blank-eyed or googly-eyed staring at me throughout the whole game. I don't know. It's weird, but I got to respect just them just being out there with it. It's so weird. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention as well, they showed off one of the bounty hunters in the game, I guess one of the bosses, that weird insect thing. It reminds me of DreamWorks' Ants, and I thought that was pretty interesting because I feel like they're going to make a reference to that to some extent. I don't know, that character looks exactly like a character from Ants. That can't be a coincidence, I don't think. I don't think it's a coincidence. But yeah, just weird conspiracy theories. You heard it here first. Last two, I should say. More of an announcement, nothing really new here, but this was really cool to see Xbox and Bethesda kind of do this, and that was Persona 3, 4, and 5 essentially coming to Xbox via the Game Pass. Did not see this coming. Atlas has just been putting all their games, more accurately the Persona games, on every single platform. I know they recently were on the PC a little while ago, and now Xbox is getting them. And I just gotta say, kudos to Xbox right now. They are really going in hard in terms of essentially making up for their slightly damaged reputation. I think it's no understatement that the Xbox One saga was a little bit messy, you know, from the get-go when announcing it and other aspects of it, and them just kind of coming across as if they don't like games. But of recently, they've been doing a good job to adapt that, or redeem themselves, if you will. A couple examples, obviously, with the Game Pass. Xbox themselves have made several statements saying that they are all about video game preservation, which I think is a very important factor. It does bother me that certain people in this world do not regard video games as art. You can dislike video games, you can not be interested, that's fine, but you cannot deny the fact that it is creation, it is art, even if you do not think it is. It is. I don't see why films or something that a naysayer likes should be preserved, why video games shouldn't. I think that's ridiculous, but those people are far and few between in a lot of cases. I do like the fact that they've been doing that. I do like the fact that they've been really trying to make it more about games on their platform. And even to some extent, I know I may sound like a bit of a hypocrite, I kind of do like the design of the Xbox Series X now. The only reason I do is because it actually makes more sense, its shape more accurately, within the context of my room. Given how my room is laid out, that console is the perfect size because I can put it on my desk and then I can put it on my shelf when I'm done. I can't really do that with a PS5. So it is quite funny that might actually be the deciding factor in terms of what the next gen console is that I get. I mean, I'm going to get a Switch first because, like I previously mentioned, the great thing about the Switch is it's so small, it's so compact, I can put it on my desk and I can literally put it in a drawer. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, props to Xbox. I think they did a fantastic job in terms of just making about the games. I really, once again, wish the best for them, and I would love for them to succeed in this console war because Sony be doing some stupid rubbish recently. I'm sure some of you might know what I'm referring to in terms of certain things shown off at their showcase, and some of you may be wondering, why are you not talking about them? There's reasons. One big reason. But yeah, let's move on to the last showcase, and I've only got one thing to talk about from it, and that is something I've been looking forward to for a while since it was announced over a year ago, and that is going to be for Resident Evil Village, the DLC Shadow of Rose. Now, warning, the trailer in which they reveal this game, or DLC, whatever you want to call it, contains spoilers. Now, I understand not everyone has played Resident Evil Village, and I don't want to be the one that spoils anything. So I'm going to be talking very carefully about this. I will not spoil anything, but be advised, the trailer itself does spoil the game. So keep that in mind. I'm going to be very cryptic how I talk about this game. But given the DLC, I'm actually really interested in what's going on. Where you're going to be going and who you're going to be playing as is really interesting. It is kind of cool how I think we are going to be transitioning for the next game to some extent, given that this game is going to be played in third person. So it's going to be very interesting to play a more higher up mainline game in a third person perspective. And although the concept is a bit bizarre and I have no idea how it's legitimately going to work to some extent, it does open up the door for a lot of really creative and interesting ideas. It does feel like they can just basically do anything, which I think was a very smart thing for them to do. It wasn't just a rehash of Village, or they may reuse assets, and I think that's fine given what's happening here, but I'm okay with that. It looks like it's going to be a really interesting game, and I hope that it's actually quite long. They've been working on this one for a while. I don't want it to be like an hour-long thing. I want it to be something that feels like a short game. I think I would be disappointed if it's 3 hours long, but we'll see. Maybe it'll be the best 3 hours ever. But we'll see. Another few things they did mention with Resident Evil, because it is just Resident Evil's decade, or whatever you want to call it. There is going to be some new content for the Mercenaries Mode, which I'm both excited for and not excited for. I'll explain in a minute. So you're going to be able to play as 3 other characters, Chris, Redfield, Lady Demetress, and obviously Heisenberg. They're going to be really interesting to play as. Obviously Chris is a little bit more military based, and I do love the fact that with Lady Demetress, she is actually still 9 feet tall within the game, so you're just going to be just swinging at people, whatever. I think that's really great. I do wonder how far she's going to move. I do wonder if we're actually going to get a great sense of her power. And I just love the idea of I think this is Capcom kind of going, let's give them some fan service. They love the tall lady. Let them play as the tall lady, which I always imagine how the focus group meeting went to some extent. I think even in one of the animations, you literally see her throw a chair, which is awesome, but super weird at the same time. But yeah, I can't wait for that. I am kind of dreading it because actually doing the mercenaries in that game was one of the toughest parts of that game, actually. Getting the S rank and triple S rank was quite difficult and quite frustrating. It's a rhythm, it's a strategy. I don't have nightmares about it, not like I did with Crash 4 It's About Time, but yeah, it definitely took a lot out of me. Once I got that final trophy, it was like, yeah, I got to take a break. And speaking of Village once more, they're actually going to be adding in a third-person mode, which I know a lot of people really wanted, and I'm happy that people get to have that, and I'm happy that the game has, or the developers are giving us the option. I'm actually really excited to play the game again in third person and see how the animations work with Ethan in them, and whether the game's going to be easier or harder, or whatever. I'm actually really excited for this. It's all going to be part of the Resident Evil Village Gold edition, which is pretty cool. I might just download it and maybe save my copy of Gold until I get a PS5 or an Xbox Series S. But yeah, I'm really excited for this game and this DLC. And that's pretty much going to wrap up this podcast for the most part. It was a much longer episode than I usually do, but there was so much to talk about. There's so much to talk about. I have already a lot of things to talk about for next podcast because the news has not stopped. unfortunately. But hey, it just means you're going to get another juicy episode come 2 weeks' time. Now, a few things I want to quickly mention. The first is typically when we do reach June, I like to do the best and worst of the year so far. Not doing it this time, obviously, because this episode was so long. So I'm actually going to do it on the next episode. It gives me a chance to watch a few more things or do a few more things in the meantime. So look forward to that. And yeah, I think I already said it before, but happy Pride Month. Hopefully you're enjoying it. Hopefully you should be celebrating it. You should be respectful. And that does lead me on to the video of the episode, which is actually going to be CEOs during Pride Month by Brandon Rogers, the YouTube comedian. Some of you may know him more accurately as Blitzo from Hell of a Boss by Visipop, the animation studio person, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, really fun video. It's a short one, and it does come from a very cynical perspective. Please keep in mind it obviously is a joke, but at the same time, it's unfortunately a little bit too true. There are unfortunately people who do treat Pride Month as nothing more than just a marketing campaign or scheme. So, there's that. But hopefully you guys enjoy the video. Definitely check out more of his videos if you like his style. He's definitely out there. He's no hold bars for the most part. And I respect that, especially in this day and age. It's really hard to be offensive but not disrespectful. And props to him for striking that balance for the most part. But yeah, that's pretty much going to be this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It took a long time to make. I legitimately almost watched every single game trailer that was released for these showcases. So I am tired mentally and physically. It was really draining, but I just didn't want to miss that one game that I thought would be cool. And I didn't mention any games that I've already previously talked about or games that are literally releasing like round the corner, because there are a few like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, or White Neon. Like those games pretty much got trailers, but they've pretty much come out since then. So yeah, but yeah, hopefully you enjoyed once again, and I will end this podcast like I always do by saying I was the Angry Raccoon, and I will see you on the next podcast.